Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. I want to show you today how to enter the diversity visa lottery. This is the green card lottery to be able to win your green card to live in the USA. I've been helping people through the green card lottery for about 10 years now. Entering the lottery is obviously the biggest first step you can make. It's also where a lot of people already make mistakes. They're disqualified from the process right from the very beginning. And in fact, if you look at, for example, the latest visa lottery that's just running right now, about 70% of entries in Africa were disqualified even before the process started, before the results started. Okay, so there are some things that you can do with your entry that will disqualify you. And I want to make sure you don't do that, right? Give yourself the best possible chance. So if you want to learn how to enter the lottery, and if you want to have the best possible chance of winning the green card lottery, then spend a few minutes with me now to make sure that you're not going to make a mistake that will cost you your chance. Okay? All right. Okay. So the first thing that I want to talk about is actually probably the biggest single threat to your entry right from the very beginning. It's about the photo. The photo for the entry for both yourself and your spouse or any children that you have is very important. I imagine probably it's the biggest single reason why entries get discarded from the lottery. So right there from the beginning, if you don't take a little bit of time with your photo, then really you may as well not enter the lottery because your entry is just going to be discarded, right? So I've created a video for you to sort of understand your options with regard to the photo. It's very important you use a new photo each year of entry. So for this year, please make sure you're taking a new photo. If you use a photo from a previous year's entry, they will have that photo and they'll realize that you haven't complied with one of the rules and they'll discard your entry straight away. So you'll have lost straight away. So you need to take a new photo for each year, and that goes for you and your spouse and your children. Okay. So that's the most important thing right up front. Once you've got your photo, and if you watch my video, which I'm going to link, I'll link below in the description in my YouTube video. I'll also put a link to it above the screen, so you can stop now if you want and go have a look at that related video and see how you can take your photo or get some tips and advice on how not to make a mistake, right? But let's say that you've now got your photo ready, it's on your computer or however you're entering, and now you want to know how to fill in the entry form. There are only about 15 or 16 questions. It's a pretty simple form to go through. And of course, the entry is totally free. You don't need to pay anybody to do this for you, but you need to understand how you should fill in these questions. So please watch this part of the video with me now to make sure you don't make a mistake. Okay. All right. So let's bring up the entrance form. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm using a training form. This is not the real entry form. The real entry form will look very similar to this for DV25 or beyond. It'll look very similar to this. It'll have the same questions, but this isn't the actual form. Okay, so this is just a training one. So we can play around with this and make sure you understand how to fill in the questions. Okay. All right. So this is what you're going to have. The first thing you're going to need to answer is your name, your first, middle, and last names. Right. Now, the last name, family name, is the first place where a lot of people fall down and make a mistake. They don't really understand. So in some countries, they don't understand what is meant by surname or family name or last name. Okay. Now, I often give a couple of examples to sort of to try and explain this. In Western culture, the family name tends to be shared amongst amongst the family. So, for example, you could have Mr. and Mrs. Smith who have a kid, and there's Jack Smith, the kid, and John Smith is his brother, and Mary Smith, right? In that scenario, Smith is the family name. It's the name they all share. There's mum and dad and the three kids, right? So that's a family name, sometimes called a last name, sometimes called a surname. That's the family name. It may be different in other cultures. For example, in the Hispanic and Spanish culture, there's a double-barreled name. So you'll have a name from the father and the name from the mother, perhaps, and those two names together will be combined for the children. And so, as a child of your parents, you may even have a different name to your parents, and it'll be a combination of both your parents, right? That can be the case. In that case, your family name, your surname, or your last name is those two names put together, right? So you may be, I don't know, let's say Jose Lopez Smith, right? So Lopez Smith is your last name, okay? And Jose is your first name. Perhaps you've got a middle name. You may or may not have. Let's say you're Jose Maria Lopez Smith, right? So Maria in that case would be your middle name, okay? So I'm going to use an example here. I thought we'd have some fun, and we'll talk about Bob Marley. Bob Marley was a musician that sadly died. But his name is kind of interesting because he was not actually born Bob Marley. His name was Robert Nestor Marley, right? So when I'm going to come into the lottery here, his last name is Marley. His first name is Robert, not Bob, because Bob is a shortened version of his legal name, right? And then his middle name is Nestor. Okay, so that's how I would fill that out. His surname or last name is the first name I put in there. His first name is Robert, and then middle name Nestor. Let's say he didn't have a middle name, then I could just click that button that says no middle name, right? In some cultures, there is just one name. Be very sure that that's really what you mean. If you've literally got one name, like your name is Madonna, for example, then you would only have Madonna in that first box, right? Because there isn't a box there that allows no last name. And so you would click on no first name. This probably should delete. You'd click on no first name, no middle name, and your name is Madonna, right? Seems unlikely, but because Madonna lives here. But you take my point. That's how you could enter that if your name was Madonna, right? So we're going to go back and say, okay, we're going to have Bob Marley is our name, or Robert Nestor Marley. I think it was Nestor. Yeah, Nestor. Okay, so that's the name there. Gender, pretty easy, male or female. It's your gender assigned at birth. It's your, that should be pretty easy to figure out. Now, your birth date, another important area where people mess up here. In America, the birth date or any date is normally written month, day, year, right? Whereas in Europe and a lot of other countries around the world, the day is first, then the month, then the year, right? So if your date of birth was the 29th of November 1970, right? In America, you put 11 as the month, 29 as the day, and 1970 for the year, right? So that's how the form wants you to fill in the date, right? Please make sure you don't make a mistake there. If you get these two numbers the wrong way round, it can lead to complications later. So it's not the end of the world if you made a mistake there, but it's much better if you can avoid that. Now, if you live in a country where there's some other system of the calendar, then you're going to need to convert that date into this date format in order to enter the lottery. Okay, please make sure you get that right. Okay, now let's say for this particular entry, we're going to assume that Bob Marley was French, right? We're going to say he was born in Paris, right? Now, Paris is a big city with lots of individual little areas. You may think of your birthplace as being one of those individual areas, and that's okay. You can put that, but you can also put the slightly larger area of Paris, or the city name where you were born. Okay, so take a little bit of care about that, and if you want, get your birth certificate and make sure that what you think is your birthplace is what your birth certificate says. Okay, that would be helpful at this point. Select a country, so we're going to select France, and it's the country where you were born. Now, for many of us, we're born in a country which is eligible for the lottery. Okay, but in each year's instructions, the instructions will give a list of countries that are not eligible to enter the lottery. And so there is, for some people, there is a concern about, can I enter the lottery even though I was born in this other country that is mentioned as not an eligible country. For example, I was born in the United Kingdom. That's not an eligible country. And so there is a way you can still enter the lottery, and I'll explain that now. But for the majority of people, you're just going to pick the country where you were born, and the country where you were born is your country of eligibility for the lottery, or the country of chargeability. Okay, and so for 99% of you, that is going to be how you'll enter. It is not your country of nationality or the country of current residence. Please bear this in mind. It is the country where you were born. That's the most important thing. Okay, so question number 5 is that country where you were born. Now, it says, and it explains here, your country of eligibility is normally the country where you're born. That's the first thing it says, right? So again, 99% of you should be entering nothing more than the country where you were born. But some of you may be, like me, from a country that is not eligible, and maybe you need to pick some other way of entering the lottery. So there are 2 other ways that you can enter the lottery. Let's just, for this example, let's say, no, I'm not going to claim eligibility based on the country where I was born. Most people, 99% of people, are going to say yes, right? And they don't even need to answer question number 6, right? They're going to say yes, they're claiming eligibility based on where they were born. But if you were born in a country that is not eligible, then you're going to click no on this question, and you're going to choose the country that is the country that is eligible. And we'll say, in this case, we'll say Spain. We'll pick Spain. Where are you? Spain. Okay, so that would be an eligible way to do things. Now, France is eligible and Spain is eligible. So why would I do that? It doesn't make a lot of sense. That doesn't make sense, right? So it would only be if my country of birth were not eligible that I would even be thinking about answering question number 6. But if you have to, then you can do this. Now, there's only two ways you can pick another country which is not your country of birth. The first way is if you're married to someone from an eligible country. So in my case, for example, I was born in the United Kingdom, and that is not eligible. But I was married to a lady from Spain, and Spain is eligible. So I was able to enter the lottery by claiming her country of birth as my chargeability, right? So through marriage, you can claim your spouse's country of birth, okay? Through marriage. That's the first exception. The second exception is if your parents were visiting the country where you were born at the time of your birth, and actually neither one of them were nationals of that country, right? So let's give an example here. Let's say your parents were both from Morocco, but you happen to be living in Spain, or your parents happen to be living in Spain at the time of your birth. They were there for business reasons, they were there temporarily, and you think you can prove that, right? In that case, you could choose their country of birth. One of your parents, you could choose their country of birth as your country of chargeability. Now, I only recommend you use exception number 1 or number 2, like the country of birth of your spouse or the country of birth of one of your parents. I only recommend you use that if, number 1, you know what you're doing, and number 2, the country where you were born was not eligible, right? If your country of birth was eligible, then just use that, right? That really is the smartest way of doing things. The only other reason that you might choose to pick another country through, for example, your country of your parents' country of birth or your spouse, is ineligibility of your own country, but also because you want to be in a different region, particularly Oceania, because Oceania has a better chance of selection than any other region, right? That's the only reason that you should really consider doing that, or the only 2 reasons. Okay, so this would be okay. I could enter this way, and that would put me into chargeability country of Spain. Okay. Okay, then you choose a photo. You're going to choose, where's my photos here? You're going to choose a photo to upload. So there's my photo. Now, if you've watched my video on how to create a photo, you'll see that that's okay. Now, this particular website is a website that allows me to train on this entry form, but also the website is offering to help people create a good photo for a few dollars. I think it's like $7 or something. So this particular website is validating my photo and suggesting that I should use their system to fix this. So I'll show you. Well, I do show that in the other video, but for me right now, I know this is okay. All right. So then, when it comes to the mailing address, the address you would normally not put in care of. That's not normal, right? But you would pick the address where you live. So 1 any street, and let's say I'm going to be in Paris, and district, county, province, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Postal zip code, let's say there is none. Okay. And the country there is going to be France. There you go. So I've just put my address there, the city, that's important, and the county, district, county, I think that's going to be required, so we'll put Paris there too. Okay, country where you live today, well, again, that's going to be France. And then the phone number is optional, so you don't even need to put that in there. You do need to put an address in there, so me@gmail.com, right? And confirm the email. So you just need to put your address in there, try and make sure they're both the same. What's the highest level of education you have achieved as of today? Now, every year I get people who ask me about this, and they're very worried about this question because they think that it might affect their chance of selection or cause them a problem later. It does not matter how you answer this particular question. Number 13 about education doesn't matter at all. It's simply them trying to collect information on the demographics, who's entering the lottery, so that they can say, okay, 10% of people that entered had high school, no degree, for example. Or some university courses, or whatever you pick. So whatever is your accurate guess, most accurate guess of your level of education. Did you only go to high school? Did you go to university? Have you completed a university degree? Whatever it is, just pick what's most accurate. There's no need to lie about this one. It doesn't affect your chances of selection at all in any way. Okay. So just pick whatever is correct. Now, this number 14 is hugely important. it is absolutely essential that if you are married, you have to be, well, your answer on this question has to be accurate, right? So you may be unmarried, right? Don't put unmarried if you're actually married, right? Some people do this every year. And honestly, if you make that mistake, if you say you're unmarried when you're actually married, that is instant disqualification once you're selected. Okay. You will go to the interview and be disqualified, and there is no way around that. Okay. So don't pick that particular option if it's not true. In fact, on this question about marital status, just pick the right one. So I'll go through the options here. Unmarried means you've never been married, you're single, you've not been married and divorced or widowed or anything like that. You're unmarried and you've never been married. Next option is married and my spouse is not a US citizen or LPR, lawful permanent resident. That's basically, for most people living outside the US, that's going to be the case if they are married. Okay. You may select that you're married and your spouse is a US citizen, but if that's not true, for goodness sake, don't select that, right? And you may have selected divorced, right? Now, if you select divorced, you're going to be expected to present divorce paperwork. So make sure you have that. If you don't have the paperwork, don't say you're unmarried. That's not the same thing. Okay. Make sure that you get the paperwork. Similarly, for widowed, you're going to be asked for a marriage certificate and a death certificate of your spouse. Okay. So again, you need to make sure that only pick these options if they're actually true. And then the last one is legally separated, legally separated status. Now I see people choose this one because they don't live with their spouse right now, because they're going through some sort of breakup or whatever it might be. That is not reason to use this particular option. Legally separated is a status that is only possible through a court order. Okay, so you must have gone to court and said to the court, we're going to separate and we want proof of that legal separation. That's the only way that legal separation happens, right? So for most of you, you're going to be unmarried or married, right? Most of you will not be saying you've got a US citizen spouse. Some of you will be divorced or widowed, of course. Very, very few of you will actually be legally separated. It's just not a common thing. Okay, so and you will be disqualified if you choose the wrong option on this particular question. Okay, so if you choose married, then at a later point it's going to require you to enter your spouse's information. You'll need a photo of your spouse as well, with all the same qualities of your own photo. So again, the photo video that I've prepared that shows you how to take the photo, that's going to be important for your spouse as well. Okay, and obviously the questions for the spouse are going to be much simpler. So I won't show you that, but it will be much simpler. And then the number of children. Put the correct number of children. Now this is another huge area where people get this wrong. A child for this lottery is any biological child of yours, whether they live with you or not, that is under 21 and unmarried. Okay, and it actually says here who are unmarried and under the age of 21. Right now, it also says all biological children, all legally adopted children, and stepchildren. Right, stepchildren is where you acquire children through marriage to a spouse. So you marry someone who may or may not have been married before, but that spouse has children from a previous relationship, right? And those children become your stepchildren, and you have to include those stepchildren if they're under 21 and unmarried, right? It's really important you get this question right. If you miss a spouse or you miss a derivative child off of your application, and later you try and process your application because you were selected as a winner, you will be disqualified. Okay, so please don't put yourself through that pain. Okay, so that's it. 15 questions. You don't need a passport for this year's entry. There's just 15 questions. It's pretty hard to mess this up if you just read the instructions that are on the screen, or better yet, read the instructions here that are provided. There's instructions for every year. This one's from DV 2024, but there'll be a set of instructions for every year, and they're also in multiple languages. There are translations are provided here. Okay. Now, the website where you go to fill this in, you go to dvprogram.state.gov. Here's the web page. During the entry period, this will look a little bit different. The entry period is usually from early October to early November. This year it's opening on October the 4th, and it will run for about 5 weeks. And during that time, when you come to dvprogram.state.gov, you'll find the way to enter that process, and you'll get into a form similar to the form that I've showed you here. Okay. Please be honest in your application. That is hugely important. If you're married, please select that you're married. If you have children, biological children or stepchildren or legally adopted children, they should be included. They should all be included. You cannot include a child that is, let's say you're looking after a child from your brother because your brother, isn't able to look after the child. Unless you have legally adopted that child, you can't include that child, right? With legal adoption, the adoption process had to have happened 2 years before the interview. So you can't just work backwards and say that you legally adopted that child. You need all of the paperwork, right? So please don't lie, don't make any mistakes. If you're not sure about anything on these 15 questions, then stop and think, read the instructions first of all. But if you can't work out what you should be putting on there, drop me a note at BritSimonSays.com. That's BritSimonSays.com, and I'll make sure that link is in the description under this YouTube video. Good luck. You should know that there's going to be about 20 to 25 million entries this year. It's a lottery. It's not a plan. They will select around about 100,000 to 120,000 people probably. And so when they select that many people, it doesn't mean you're automatically a winner, but you've got a good chance of going through the process. And I can explain that if you get selected. The other thing that people often ask is, I have this education or I have this work experience, should I enter? And I would always say, look, just enter, see if you're selected. Your chance of selection is not that high. So if you're selected, then you can think about, okay, do you meet the requirements? But first of all, just enter, okay? That's it. That's all I wanted to explain. It is really as simple as that. It's a free process to enter. It's 15 questions. The only complicated bit is you have to have a photo. And the photo needs to meet the requirements. So do pay attention to that. Have a look at my other video if you haven't already had a look at the video about creating the photo. Okay. Other than that, best of luck. Fingers crossed for you. Maybe this will be your year, and you'll get to live in the USA. All right. I hope so. Good luck then. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.